afternoon, all. I'll be talking a little bit about the beginning of my career. I don't have slides because I want to focus on the message and on the events that actually happened to me. So I did my undergraduate in Technical, 5 years undergraduate degree in chemistry. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was a very happy years, and I really enjoyed the chemistry degree. But I didn't want to do just pure chemistry for the rest of my life. I wanted to do something related to space, because that has been always my dream since I can remember, and I wanted to put the two things together. And the 5-year degree, undergraduate degree at that time, had experimental work on the last year, so you could stay either in Portugal or go abroad, or stay in a lab or go to industry, so do whatever the student wanted, and that was really, really nice. Um, so when I was in the 4th year, I actually saw, I read the book and then I saw the movie of Carl Sagan, Contact. And in that moment, I thought this is actually what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, because he put it together chemistry, but to study the universe. And so it started my search to the place where I was going to do my undergraduate training. And I remember I wrote 5 emails to NASA, to the astrochemistry group. It wasn't the astrobiology, it was the astrochemistry group at NASA. And I wrote different emails, and all of them told me, just go to the Netherlands and work with this professor. She's from Austria, but she's working in the Netherlands, and her name is Pascal Edenfreund, and she'll be perfect for what you want to do. So I wrote her an email, and we're talking the beginning of this century. So emails and computers are not like we know it now, something completely different, nearly 20 years ago. And so I wrote an email. Professor Pascal Edenfreund accepted me in her group to do some undergraduate degree, some undergraduate training, 6 months. I went there. I was applying all the analytical chemistry techniques I learned, but this time to samples that were extraterrestrial, so to meteorite samples. I did some other projects, but that one was the one I really enjoyed. I really love to live in Leiden in the Netherlands. Beautiful city, cycling everywhere, really, really nice environment. So I thought, okay, I really enjoy this. This is really what I want to do. This is the path I want to continue to do. So I'm going to apply to do a PhD. So I'm going to apply for an FCT scholarship. And then a few months later, I did. I won, and I went back. And so I had 4 years of money to do my PhD in a research area that I love. And I was really happy and excited for the project, for the people I work, lovely people, for everything that I was doing. But I was in charge of a project that was challenging. It was something completely new, in the sense that we wanted to test a new theory, something that the community has been discussing for the past 40 years. So basically, we wanted to know if nucleobases that were being detected in different meteorites were actually part of the meteorite, or if they were just contamination. And this was important because we wanted to know if, in this case, these components of the genetic material were actually being formed outside of the Earth, and whether they had a contribution for the origin of life on Earth or not. So this was my project. And obviously, when you're testing something completely new with some new techniques and new methods, it's a challenge, as you can imagine. But I was very excited, and I thought, okay, let's do with this slowly and we'll eventually get there. So optimizing all the methods, for those of you that are chemists and those of you are not, it takes a long, long time. It took me nearly 3 years out of a PhD of 4 years. And I was noticing that all my colleagues in my group, in the astrobiology group, were publishing. So one of the things when you do a PhD in the Netherlands is that before you have your PhD defense, you need to publish at least 4 articles. So you're able to put it all together, write a thesis, and then submit and have a PhD defense. So without articles, you're not able to defend and have your PhD. And I was noticing during my PhD that all my colleagues were publishing easily, and I was the one that was really working really hard. But at the same time, I was not able to publish anything because what I was doing was something completely different, and obviously it would take time. So during the first year, more or less, of my PhD, I gave a talk. All this was in parallel and it will come together at some point. So I gave a talk in the first year of my project saying, I'm doing this. I still don't have big results, just preliminary results, but I'm working on this type of research. And on this international conference, there were some colleagues from NASA. At the end of my talk, they came to me and said, look, we really enjoy what you're doing and we want to collaborate with you. So please come to NASA Goddard in Washington, DC for a few months as invited scientists, and we'll get this thing working. And so at the end of my PhD, after optimizing all the methods, after what I hoped was having really small amounts of sample, but enough to do the analysis at NASA, I flew to the States. I didn't take the samples with me because I was afraid that I would be stopped in customs with samples that look like powder. As you can imagine, entering the US with white powder, it wouldn't look good on me. So I just mail it. I put it on the post. And so in parallel to flying to the States, my samples went there. And so I was at NASA for a couple of months. Also there, I had to learn new methods, new techniques to get my samples and everything. And when everything was optimized, I thought, okay, now is the time to actually run my samples and hopefully, fingers crossed, get some results. When I got there and to that point, we realized that the samples arrived by mail, by post to NASA, and we were happy because it was register mail. But then we realized that inside of NASA, the secretary lost my samples. And so this was absolutely devastating because, as I told you, I was 3 years already into my PhD, no publications whatsoever. My samples were lost, so I had nothing to run. And this is not like I could synthesize again my samples because meteorites are extremely rare and precious samples. And so you can't simply say, oh, just give me some more. You basically have to write a full proposal to a museum, and then they give you a few milligrams and you have to explain even then why you want that, and this takes a lot of time. So at that point that we realized, I was still in the States, and I realized my samples were lost. The secretary lost it somehow. We don't, till today we still don't know how somebody lost my samples. And at the same time, I had submitted a manuscript, not directly involved with this project, but just a side project to try to get some articles published. And we had, as a group, astrobiology group in Leiden, we had a competitor, and our manuscript went to that competitor. So our manuscript was completely thrown away. And so all of this was in a same week, same couple of days. So I have to say that week wasn't easy for me at all, because I was abroad, even though I was surrounded by nice people, but still you're not home. You're just in a place for a couple of months, so you can't, say, oh, at the end of the day I go home. It's not actually home. It's just a place where you're sleeping. Uh, the samples I've been working for 3 years were lost. Uh, my money was coming nearly to an end because 4 years of funding, and you have to explain, as you know, what you're doing. And so I was just seeing that I had one extra year and that was it. And then one of the articles got rejected. So at that point, I was, let's put it in a nice way, it wasn't a brilliant week. I was really, really down. I have to say that my supervisor and co-supervisor and collaborators, they were all amazing people. And I think that's also some of the take-home messages I'll tell you in a minute. It's just surround yourself with people that support you in the good moments and in the bad moments. And everybody was extremely supportive. So they helped me to write a proposal to get more meteorite sample. We got it really fast. And so the solution was either to give up or to fight. And in this case, I went back to the Netherlands, and the extraction of the samples that took me 3 years, I managed to do in a few months. And so optimizing everything that was already optimized, go back, fly a second time to the States, and this time we actually got results. The other article that was rejected, obviously we worked again really hard, and later people told me it has nothing to do with the article, it has to do also with competition and everything, just rewrite a few things. We know how science works. At the end of the day, at the end of the 4 years, and that's, you know, moving a little bit forward, I managed to get the paper, the first one that was rejected, published. We managed to get the paper that took us so many years to optimize methods also published, and it was all over the news, on the media. So really great, lots of citations, so really good. I managed also to get the job I wanted at university I wanted. So I got not a permanent position yet, but I got a postdoc offer to go and to work at Imperial College. So at that time was on the top 5 universities on the world, working in for a space mission. So at that time I went and I worked for the ExoMars mission. I don't work for that mission anymore, but I was working for that space mission at that point. And so at the end of the day, I got out with not only the 4 articles I needed to defend my PhD thesis, but roughly 10 articles. So things work out at the end. And I managed to finish on time, which for me was also important because the money was there just for the 4 months. And I think this was just, you know, looking back and also to all the setbacks I had during my postdoc, and I'll tell a little bit in a minute. I think there are many take-home messages here. First of all is you need to work in a group and surrounded with people that you really consider good colleagues and friends, because there's going to be always bad moments, and you need to surround yourself with people where you can discuss your results. You're not in an island, you don't feel isolated from the rest of the world. So good colleagues are important, people that can support you no matter what. So at the end of the day, if you want to go out and have a drink or a coffee with that people, it's also very important. Have a very supportive family if possible. That's also very, very important for me. It was always, even though I was living abroad, for me, it was always very important to have an extremely supportive family that always supported me in every sense. Other lesson is don't compare yourself to other people. Because I was seeing my colleagues getting publishing all the articles all the time throughout the 3 years, and I was not publishing. This is not a race between different people. You are in your own path, and you actually don't know what other people are going through in their professional life or personal life. So it is really important that you don't compete or you're not racing with your colleagues. Again, it's being supportive. It's extremely important. And then at the end of the day, it's just thinking that you have 4 years, and even if those 4 years fail, there's always alternatives. And even that, it's just to think that for me the first 3 years didn't work great, because even though I was working, it's the process, and knowing that in science things don't work out next day. To get results, it takes years and years and years. It's the way that science works. I know this is very difficult to explain to the common people, or to friends that don't work in science, or even to family. And it's very difficult to explain that you're working in a project that you will only get results in 5 years or 10 years or 15 years. So for example, I'm part of space missions, and I won't get any results in less than 15 years. So it is very, very weird and difficult to explain to people that I'm already working for projects that I won't know anything before that. And that's why in many cases, not my case, but in many cases, people start to work in a project and then they retired and they don't see the results for that space mission. So all of that. And I learned that. I learned I learned the hard way what it is to work in the space field. So not only in science, but particularly in the space field. And this brings me to the next step of my talk and my career also. So as I said, I moved to after my PhD, I went to Imperial College in London. And what happened, as I said, I was working for a space mission and for a particular instrument that was part of the ExoMars mission. And a year more or less into my postdoc, my boss called me and said, well, close the door. We need to talk. Just to let you know that the instrument we are part of this space mission just got canceled. And so you have a couple of months of salary. And after that, that's it. You're done. Because I was being paid to work for that mission. So as you can imagine, again, living abroad, the salary was the only income. Obviously, you can't depend on anyone, and that was really difficult. So I had to apply for as many scholarships and fellowships in that case as possible. Think of plan B and C and D and whatever I can think. I can tell you that I applied for 5 or 6 fellowships at that point, and I got 4 of them. I got 4 different offers, so it worked out really well because I had so many articles from my PhD. But again, it's always like I compare working in science to a little bit those movies from Indiana Jones. That you always have to run because behind you there is always some dangers, and you have to run and keep on running and trying to think while you're running of plan B and C and D and F and so I think that's also important. And talking about thinking of plan B and C and D, while I was in UK, something that was very important for me, I got funded a big chunk of money, £1 million from the Royal Society for 8 years. Very prestigious, very competitive. And while I was there, the Royal Society also wrote a report that clearly show that for the 100% of students that have a PhD, only 3% will get a position in academia. And from those, only 0.5% will get a position as full professor. So those numbers are scary, but they're very realistic. And when speaking with students, I always mention that report because it is important to know all your alternatives. We don't have to follow an academic career to be successful. And I've spoken with many students, and some of them actually didn't want to be in academia after the PhD. They wanted to go to industry or teaching or do something completely different. That's where their heart was, but they thought they were a failure just because they're leaving academia. So that idea has to completely change. And so the report from the Royal Society is very, very important in that sense. And I think this sort of report also adapted to the Portuguese reality, which maybe I believe it's not that different than from the British reality. We should be aware very young that if you want to follow an academic career, you should know the paths towards getting a permanent academic position, either in Portugal or somewhere else. But at the same point, it is important to know that if you're not feeling happy, that's the key word, if you're not feeling happy, if that's not where your heart is, and during your PhD you realize that, then there are other alternatives. They're all valid. And so you should start searching and talking with somebody, a mentor or somebody senior that can help you. Again, going back to the Royal Society, I think it's an amazing example, an institution. And even though I left UK, I still collaborate with them and I'm in touch with them. And I can tell you they have this mentor scheme. So I'm now mentoring some very younger people that got fellowships, and so tell them all the alternatives. It's not for me to tell them to do A, B, or C, but it's to show them the alternatives. And I think that's important. Either you stay in academia or in other paths, it is important to talk. And because we are in this forum because of mental health, it is important to know that it's normal to fail and be talking. Talking is important, and telling other people what are the alternatives. Just because it worked for you, it doesn't have to work for the other person, but it's important to talk and to show the different alternatives.